Hi, Tara. How are you today?
I'm so good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad that we met. I have to say, I was telling you before we got on the call that I just felt this immediate connection with you. It's kind of weird. Well, I think I was attracted to you because you had this, it's not weird to be attracted to you, but because you're an attractive woman, but you had this amazing dress on that day.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
You
And should we spill
remember?
the beans?
I think we should spill the beans because I have to say, I wish you were wearing the dress today.
Oh, right, right.
Because all I can, and it's such a girl conversation or woman conversation to be like, I looked at your dress and I was like, whoa, where did you get that at? I have to have it. But go ahead, tell us, spill the beans.
Okay, so I got several compliments on that dress. And just a few weeks before, I had ordered it from Walmart.com.
Oh my God, it's so good. But
So
let's say,
I
isn't
did
it
have a
intermix or
friend.
something?
Is it what?
But isn't it intermix? Oh, Scoop. It's Scoop,
It
isn't
was
it?
Scoop. It was like a Scoop brand, and they carry some of their stuff. But I had a friend who helped me style it a little bit. So she helped me add a cute belt to it and stuff like that. And then it looked like you thought it was some name brand
Oh,
thing
I thought
from
it was like
Bloomingdale's.
Diane von Furstenberg. I thought it was I don't know. I was
Yeah.
just all over the place. I was like, I need that dress. Where did you get it before we left?
Well, I have to say, not only are you a completely warm and inviting and fun person, so I was excited to get to know you, but I don't get compliments on my outfits all that often. So it was a huge boost in
Well,
ego for me
well,
that
listen,
day.
Sarah, like the simple fact that you're a chef really limits the outfits. Let's just
It
say.
does. It does.
And speaking of which, let me just give a little introduction about you because I think actually what's interesting about chefs is since we're talking about outfits,
Hmm.
is that sometimes the style comes in the way they creatively present what they prepare.
Oh.
I believe this is my philosophy.
Uh-huh.
And what I would say to you, and no disregard to anybody else that was there that day, because there were some amazing people that were presenting their different food, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But yours was so well presented and so well thought out about how you were
Thank
going
you.
to present it. So here's the deal. Like for me, I'm a marketer, right? So
Yes.
like it's in the end of the day, it's how are you going to present it? And what does the merchandise look like, right? So I'm a sucker
Yep.
for packaging. So since it's food, it's all out there, right? And so all I could do was sit and I couldn't help myself but sit and stare at how you were preparing all your different platters, right? And
Yes,
the
thanks.
creativity that went into it. And I love, we're going to get into like some of the things that you prepared, but you do like amazing things beyond
Thanks.
that. That I literally was like, as we were getting talking before we got on the call, I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I need to help these people. They're stressed out. I need to like join in on the fun. And then you're like, you can try to go ahead and pull
Yeah.
some of these out. And I'm like, okay, I don't know if you really want me to do that, but I will. And then
And hey, with a little garnish, you did a great job.
oh Jesus, they looked horrible. I was like, and then clearly, very quickly, you're like, does anybody else have any time?
Oh, you were so sweet. Thank you. Yeah, it's funny. My background is in food styling as well as recipe development, which we can talk
Interesting.
about later. And it really is about the presentation of food. So I'm glad you noticed it.
Oh, I noticed those kinds of things off the bat because for me, if you don't merchandise things well,
Right.
sometimes some foods taste delicious, but
Mm-hmm.
they don't look amazing, right? And
Yep.
so you did such an amazing job of laying things out so meticulously and so creatively to make it all look amazing. So,
Thank you.
well, that's an amazing introduction for our,
Oh, I
our
love it.
dear
Thanks.
friend. So, anyways, today I am joined by yet another chef, and our chefs have actually been super popular, and I know that you will be just as popular as the others that we have presented as well. So, I was
That's
lucky
fun.
enough when I was in New York in November to meet Tara Bench, otherwise known as Tara Teaspoon. And
Mm-hmm.
as we talk about marketing, what an amazing marketing name.
Thanks.
I mean,
It
there's
works.
the fact that you were able to get TT, but also teaspoon. It's just,
Exactly.
yeah. So when I was in New York for Women's Entrepreneurship Day, I actually went with Katie Shin to the International Association of Culinary Professionals. Okay. And I attended the annual awards that they had, and they were showcasing, what is it, like seven different chefs or something?
Yeah, it was maybe a few more. It was cookbook awards and presentation awards, things like that that they had, looked at over the year.
Yeah. And what was awesome was I was acquainted with you, but I was also,
Hmm.
I suddenly found myself in this. I love food, and people know
Hmm.
that. But I suddenly found myself in this culinary space with all these amazingly accomplished people. And I knew there was a reason why. I knew that I was meant to connect with these people that are just like you mentioned about me, like very
Hmm.
real. Like
Hmm.
all of you are amazingly accomplished, but yet so humble and so
Oh,
present to the experience. Really
well,
cool.
that is fun that you saw that as that opportunity and being put into that space of kind of unfamiliarity. That is so special.
Yeah, I have to say, I mean, I think we've talked about this before. I think I told you that day when I was doing that horrible job of helping you. I I did get certified when I left the corporate world. I was like,
Yes.
I'm going to become a chef, and then I was like, I don't think so. Like
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
is way too hard, way a lot of work, a lot of pressure, different kind of pressure.
Yes. It's I went to school and studied culinary arts. I did not
Mhm.
go to a chef school. And I always knew I did not want to work in restaurants, but I wanted that as my path and career. So it was, yeah,
Where
sorting
did
out my
you do
life
that?
and
Like
path.
it's interesting. Like back me up. Like how did you get into it?
So I went to college, as most 18-year-olds
Yeah.
do, and my parents were very supportive and gave great advice. And my dad often said, when I was preparing to go to college, he said, study something that you really like, because ultimately that ends up being your career and you do that every day.
Yeah.
And I
Did you
remember,
grow up in New York?
oh, I grew up out west in Utah and Arizona.
Oh my gosh. Oh gosh.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that's where I studied. I went to two schools in Utah, but I started at Brigham Young University, and
Um,
I thought, hey, I love cooking. I cooked alongside my mom my whole life and I enjoyed it. And I thought, let me go into food science because that's food.
mhm.
Oh my goodness, Michelle, it's all chemistry. There's no
That's what I
cooking.
heard. My friend's daughter's in it right now. It's like she's doing like 3 hours of chemistry homework a
Yeah.
night. Sounds
Yeah. No, and I'm
fantastic.
not good at chemistry or math. So I ended up transferring to a culinary arts program and getting my degree in culinary arts and food service management at Utah State. So I stayed in Utah, but because of my transfer and all of that, I needed to do an internship after I finished schooling in order to get my degree. And some people want the long story, but I'm going to say long story short. I
I like the long story.
called every magazine in the country and said, can I come and be an intern in your test kitchen? And every single one of them said either no or we already have an intern, except for Martha Stewart Living
Mm,
Magazine.
wow.
And the test
That
kitchen
was in its
directors,
heyday.
oh, it absolutely
So
was.
hot.
And to date myself, it was clear back in, I don't know, what, 99, 99.
Wow.
So,
You're like a day older than 25. So
oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much. um, yeah, so she said, hey, you can come and interview. There was no guarantee that I would get the internship. And so I did. My mom and I flew out to New York City, and it was my first time there. And I had to cook for the test kitchen director and was a complete failure,
wow,
but
what a big deal.
it was, and it was scary. And I was fresh out of, culinary school and had very little experience. But I talked to her and I said, I know I didn't do great today, but I'm a fast learner and I would really like this opportunity. And a few days later, she called and said I could come and be the intern at Martha Stewart
Wow.
magazine. So that's how I started. That's how I got to New York. I left Utah thinking I would be in New York for a few months doing this internship. And then I thought, maybe move back out west and find a career. But they ended up liking me. I liked them and they hired me and I stayed in New York for 25 years.
Wow. So like once you got, were you overwhelmed? I mean, to go from Utah
Oh,
to New York City, like what a big deal.
It was,
Was
I
it
did
new?
have, it was scary
Mm-hmm.
and it was exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I was, early 20s. And so I was all up for an adventure. And I had been raised with that sense of adventure. We'd lived overseas when I was younger and we traveled. And so I thought, hey, this is exciting, make the most of it. But oh, it was so scary and so hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never been in the corporate world.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a big transition.
Yeah.
And I have to say, most of my bosses there were not very nice. And I came home crying most days
Mm-hmm.
until I got used to it. And I learned a few things and I learned what circumstance I was in and got better at what I was doing. And things were great, but it was really hard.
So did you start as an intern and then move into like what's the trajectory? Like how did so it was interesting because when I was at these awards with you all, it was at the
Mm-hmm.
Viking headquarters, right?
Yes.
Viking as in we all know the appliance, the large appliance company
Mm-hmm.
that people know that are amazing products. So when I was in the showroom, there were clearly like younger girls there that were
Mm-hmm.
not had not quite made it yet, right?
Sure.
And so I was trying to figure out because obviously my role is as a coach, but also like having done career coaching years ago
Mm-hmm.
was like, what is the trajectory of someone who comes in
Mm-hmm.
this industry? Like, are you an intern?
That is such an interesting question because we talked about how many years ago that was.
Yeah,
The magazine industry almost doesn't even exist anymore,
no,
right?
isn't
And
bad.
test kitchens at magazines are even fewer and far between. And so the trajectory would look very, very different these days. But
Mm-hmm.
then it was pretty typical that I went from intern, they liked me. And so they hired me as a freelancer at
Yeah,
a day rate.
yep.
And I learned recipe developing. I assisted the food editors on photo shoots.
Mm-hmm.
I did, grocery runs, things like that. So I was pretty low tier profession, but I was a freelancer. And so
Mm-hmm.
then after freelancing, they about almost a year, they offered me a position as a food editor. So
Mm-hmm.
I often over the years have gotten questions of, I want to be a food editor in a magazine,
Exactly.
or I want to do what you do. How do I
Exactly.
get there? And I say it's different for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So people can go to culinary school or they don't have to. They can assist food stylists and then become editors. They can be English majors and write and also like to cook. And
Exactly.
it's just different, but it's hard. And I always tell people I started at the bottom and I
Mm-hmm.
recommend starting at the bottom and working your way up. I think that if people jump too many steps in between, they lose a lot of the integrity of what they're doing and learning opportunities. Um,
I
I don't
love
think
that
it
you're
has to be
saying that.
hard.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that you're saying that because I think that I completely agree with you. And I think that each like if we were to look at a staircase, right? Each step plays a role, right? And to get to that top step, right? And there's different times in those in the ladder that you're exhausted and you need to
Mm-hmm.
take a break or you take a detour and you kind of go to level 4 for a little while or whatever it
Yeah.
is. But I think the thing is that what I see in this newer generation, it's they're missing steps and then they
Yeah.
really truly don't know how to run the business sometimes,
Absolutely.
but they're getting paid an exorbitant amount of money, but it's also that there's not an understanding.
There's not an understanding. There's not, I love the term finesse. There's not
Mm-hmm.
that finesse. There's that deeper understanding of
Like an
creating
expert.
and sharing. Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And nowadays the world's a little different. We don't need an expert in everything, right?
Yes.
It's a consumer world. We consume content, we consume video, we consume learning. And if someone's going to teach you, great. But it's so often that the people that aren't experts are touting themselves as experts. And I don't know, it's hard for me to see, but I'm excited for people who grow and excel. I just hope they're really understanding what they're doing.
or investing enough time. It's like the old age rule of, they say, like 10,000 hours, right?
Sure.
To
Sure.
become,
There's a reason for that, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
There's a process for each thing that's laid out, that then you would consider yourself a success, possibly.
Exactly.
But yeah, so tell me, so you get to Martha Stewart and you're this intern, and then you work your way up. And how do you then get to the place where you're like, okay, I'm leaving Martha Stewart, I'm gonna write a book, and I mean, that's like probably like 20 years in between there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write a book, I'm gonna be super successful, and everybody wants to work with me at every time.
Right. Right. Well, I have to say, I mean, a big thing is when your boss goes to jail, you kind of say, let me rethink something.
Yes,
No, that was about the time I left. She had come back from jail before I left the magazine. Um, but I had hit a ceiling. And it was very clear that I had reached a position as senior editor at Martha Stewart that I didn't have a place to move up to. And that's okay. That happens. There's only a certain number of certain positions. And I just started to feel a little bit stale, and that I wasn't learning anything. I wasn't getting new opportunities. And because of the changes at the company, it got horrendously political and awful. So it kind of was like that little, I saw the ceiling and I thought, I'll just laze my way through this. But then it got so uncomfortable that I said, okay, that's the boot kicking me and saying, you need to make a change. And so that's when I left and started freelancing. And a couple of years later, Ladies Home Journal magazine came and said, come and be our food director.
And so when you look at sort of the different experiences that you've had at different magazines as a food editor, which was your favorite?
Oh, it's so hard to say. I mean, I immediately want to say Ladies. Yeah, well, I immediately want to say Ladies Home Journal.
Yeah.
I loved the staff I worked with. I loved. They're part of. Well, they were part of Meredith Corporation, which had New York and Iowa. But yeah, I loved the content I got to put out. I was the food director and had one employee and ran my own test kitchen, and it was great. But I learned so much at Martha Stewart. So I couldn't say that, I didn't love it, because that's what was my trajectory into this world that I love. But Ladies Home Journal was
something
good.
About like laying the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Like where we always know, like where we start is not where we end. And I feel like those foundational years, just like you're describing, are so hard.
Yeah.
But yet it's also because we're learning about ourselves and acknowledging kind of some of our shortfalls. And it's like our parents get to us to a certain level, and the next thing you know, you're like, oh, all that stuff they've been saying for years might be true.
Right. Totally. Yeah, there is that learning and base. But it was fun to utilize all that skill and learning that I had done for so many years, and to be able to take it and run with it and share my love of what I do.
So what do you think like allowed you to be successful? Because and it's not really allowing, we know it's hard work, but beyond the hard work, there are some like key qualities that it really feels like you're tapping into.
There are probably a few. I think the first thing that comes to mind is luck of the draw. I had a lot of family support and friend support, just my people, my connections that always buoyed me up when I needed it.
Yeah, I love that.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a big thing. And whether you have a strong family connection or your small community that you build around you, I think that's so important, because I couldn't have done it without those communities. And then I think there's a couple others. I think being a good listener. I always try to listen, to observe before I jump into something, see how somebody else is doing it, see what worked, see what didn't, listen to what their reasoning is. I've always tried to listen. And then I think another thing is trying to be kind. It's not always a success, right? like we all have our moods and our moments, but to treat everyone with kindness. There's no reason to be mean.
Maybe this is the Utah person in you.
Maybe so.
I was
Right?
thinking, well, it's funny because I didn't know you were from, I think maybe we did talk about it that day, but like I forgot. And so when you said you were from Utah, I was like, oh, it's those strong core values
Yeah.
that kind of come forward for you. And then, like you said, like having this community support. But I do love that you're saying that these are the things that really helped you be successful. It's very interesting. So when you kind of went out on your own, you know, because here's the thing, being a female entrepreneur, so often we're so concerned about how do I generate revenue? So here you have these secure, amazing opportunities like that were making good money, I'm sure. And then you decide to go out on your own. Like, how did that, like, how did you make sure you were building a revenue stream that was secure?
I think, I mean, obviously when I had that full-time career, it's built in.
Yeah.
And then when I freelanced, if you talk to any freelancer, right, that's the worry constantly. When's the next job? When's the next paycheck? And I think you get used to that routine. You know that some months are more busy and it's a little stockpile. You're like squirrels, right? You're preparing for the quiet times. And I just got used to that lifestyle. And even now, I still have that mentality, even though I'm constantly busy and I'm so blessed with like a lot of work and opportunities and stuff going on. I still have that mentality of like, okay, there might be a slow time. So let's think about that and be okay with it.
Yeah. And how did you deal with that during the pandemic? Did you have issues or like, were you kind of doing meals for people and stuff, you know?
No, you know, my pandemic was funny. A lot of people have said, oh, I've been so slow. I was busier than ever. And I think it was because of the place I was in my business and career. I had been working from home for several years before that all happened. So when clients were like, we need this content, I was like, well, I've already been taking pictures in my apartment and creating content for you from here. So it just was that shift of, I had a lot of people coming to me and saying, our business model's changing and we need what you've been doing.
Yeah. Because they were probably seeing that you were already so ahead of it, you know,
yeah.
Which also makes you, it's interesting because you're talking about a word like relevance, right? Yeah. Is that I think it's an interesting thought because when people become freelancers, often they don't keep up with the times necessarily. And I will say that I see that in my own business, but also like I think people become resistant to change. Like, well, this is the way I've been doing it for a long time. So I don't want to shift to have to do that. But I think when you're talking about content development, we know that that's basically all everybody has to do now.
It is. It's funny. It's evolved for me too, because of the demand, right? Different businesses come into that realization at different times. But creating content, learning new technology to do it, learning new ways to do business, all of that plays into it still. It's not just like whipping up something and putting it out into the world. There's a lot that I'm constantly learning and upscaling or leveling up, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And that requires time. So how do you manage your time between all of it? Because I mean, I know you don't, we talked about this, you don't do catering and stuff like that. You do a lot of corporate stuff. So, and it's not like corporate catering, it's actually like styling and editing and all that kind of stuff. And food recipes and things like that. So how do you fit it all in?
I don't. I mean, that's the age-old question, right? Is your time management, your work-life balance, all of that. And I am constantly learning how to manage my emotions around stressful times and slow times and being overwhelmed and all of that. And I don't know. I think you just choose a certain way to time manage your business or yourself. And sometimes it slips and sometimes you have to start over. And I find myself doing that a lot. I'll get in a great workout routine and get to my desk and work the rest of the day. And then something will happen that it will flip and I roll out of bed and I'm at my desk for 10 hours a day and my self-care drops off. And I just think, okay, now it's time to time manage again and say what's important, what makes me the most valuable to my clients is being present and healthy. What makes me most creative and just resetting that.
Yeah. And I think what you're talking about is two things that I hear you saying. It's sort of like allowing yourself to be flexible, and not be so rigid, but then sort of flowing with the changes and giving yourself permission. And those are gifts because people really struggle with those, especially like at the beginning of the year right now, right? Where everybody's like,
I
want to get this and that. And you're like, it takes time.
Yeah. It's learned, right? And I think I'm always going to be learning new and better ways to do it, but it just doesn't come, right? You've experienced that. You have to consciously learn it, practice it, put it into play, see how it works. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you cook, what are your most favorite things to cook? And, because I know you wrote the book Living Deliciously, right? And you've written another book, haven't you?
Yes, Delicious Gatherings just came out this
Oh, I
fall.
love that. Yeah,
so
I
that was my
remember
second
that was
one.
like around the time that I saw you.
Yes. So that was my second book. The first one came out 2 years before that. And it's been a joy. I started writing books now almost, let's see, was it 4 years ago? It took about 2 years to write each book. And it's just kind of part of my business, part of my marketing strategy, if you will, because I knew cookbooks weren't ever going to make me money. It costs a lot to do that.
Right.
But yeah, I love cooking it all. Back to your question of what I like cooking. Baking comes easily to me, so I can do that in my sleep.
For most chefs. Most chefs actually hate baking, right? Or not hate,
True.
but like,
True.
There's not a lot of freedom, right?
Yes.
In the science of
it. Yeah. But I also I wouldn't take away savory and comforting stews and fun salads in the summer, and I really love it all. Just depends on my mood.
Yeah. So like if you were to like find yourself, are you the type of person that you go to somebody's home and everybody's so excited that you're there because you can help with this kind of stuff, but you basically make creative dishes like on the spot?
I do. Yeah. I mean, I love changing up classics and adding fun ingredients to things. I mean, my whole thing in both books is adding different flavors to your staples, having some more ingredients in your pantry that will make things exciting. And that's what I'm all about. It's an easy way to sort of up your life.
What's your favorite recipe that you've ever come up with?
Well, favorite in the sense of I'm kind of really proud of it. Years ago, I created a homemade Peeps recipe for Martha Stewart. It's just fun. It was so fun to create it and to actually see these little 3-dimensional marshmallow Peeps come to life.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I think, gosh, it changes. I love some of my baked goods. My chocolate chip cookies are everyone's favorite. It's just like my essential recipe. But everyone loves a chocolate chip cookie.
Everybody loves it. But if you have like a really good recipe for chocolate chip cookie, then it's like,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the books that you have, like the one that's obviously for gatherings, I'm assuming that what is the difference between the two books?
So the first book, Live Life Deliciously, the tagline is recipes for busy weeknights and leisurely weekends. And it is also my first book. So it encompasses some of my favorite things that I want to share, updates on classics. It's kind of like that. It's just really from the heart, kind of any cook that writes a first cookbook. It's like, here's all my precious babies, And then the second book, Delicious Gatherings, I was worried. It came out just sort of as the pandemic was lightening up, but I was creating this book during shutdown and pandemic, but it was about gathering and connecting around food. And it's been a,
by the way,
oh, thanks.
I've named some events Gather because I feel like it's such a blessing to gather in community, you know?
Yeah, small gatherings too. I mean, I'm saying gather as your family of 3 or 4, gather with your friends, get a big group together, have a family reunion. I'm talking, right? Those connections are so amazing, and food just makes it more fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, like when I met you and you had laid out all of these amazing, it was a cheese platter, but it wasn't really a cheese platter. There was
It was,
like,
yeah, butterboard.
yeah, it was a butter board. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
exactly. And I was like, oh my God, there is so much butter here. What is all of this going to taste like? And we all love, I mean, I love butter. I don't use it all that often anymore, but you had all of these different types of butters. And, you know, one was truffle and the other had, I think, what was the
There
other
was
one?
sun-dried tomato and basil, and there was yeah, a spiced one. And so I had fun. I made what we chefs call compound butter. It's just flavored butters, all different flavors. And instead of putting cheeses on platters, I put these flavored butters that you can dip bread and veggies and whatever crackers into. And it's funny, it was in my first cookbook many years, several years ago, 2.5 years ago. And the butterboard craze just came out sort of this summer. So it was fun to say, I know in my heart that I had a butterboard before y'all.
Yeah, exactly.
But, it's just a fun way of doing a snack board or a cheese platter that's not cheese, it's flavored butters.
Mm-hmm. So, and I have to say, it was quite delicious. Everything,
Thanks.
like, I couldn't stop eating it. And I think that might have been the start of my demise from like start of the holidays
Start of
on.
the holidays. There you go.
Yeah, because I was like addicted to the butter then at that point. But and so how do you work with all the different organizations that you work with, whether it be companies or IACP? And I know you're like Nancy and you had worked together prior, and I feel
Mm-hmm.
blessed enough to have been acquainted with Nancy and Margaret as well.
Mm-hmm.
But tell me how you work with them. Do you work with a lot of external organizations like that? Is that what helps move your business forward?
So the organizations are more just for my fun and networking and connecting with people that sort of do the same thing as I do. So IACP, the International Association of Culinary Professionals,
Mm-hmm.
and then also Les Dames Escoffier. It's the Ladies of Escoffier is a food and wine group
Ooh, that sounds
that's
amazing.
international. And so I'm part of both groups just to stay connected to my world and people that I've known in the industry. But the way that I work with clients or other businesses varies. Most often, a food brand will come to me and say, hey, we need some recipes for our food product, or
Mm-hmm.
we need some more recipes for our website, or we need some content that we can use for our internal marketing. And so I will create new recipes, innovative, trendy things that they can utilize with their brand. And that often doesn't have my name on it. So there's no Terra teaspoon associated with it. I've done stuff for companies like Palm Wonderful, Wonderful Pistachios, Rice Krispies.
You come to LA then?
What's that?
You come to LA then? Because Palm's here. Wonderful company. Yeah.
I know they come to me. They
Oh,
come
wow.
and sit
Wow.
in my studio and we do the photo shoot. So, no, I rarely travel. I create content here in my New York City apartment. I've created my little mini test kitchen and I have a studio here in my second bedroom, literally.
Oh,
So
that's
it's
amazing.
very pandemic-y, but I was doing this before that.
Well, there's
Figuring
also
it.
something very efficient about it, which is why
Yes.
people haven't really wanted to fully give up going back into an
Yeah.
office, right?
Yeah. So that's a lot of what I do. And I really enjoy that because I get to see the process from the start to finish and hand them this wonderful little package of wonderfulness. And then other times I'm just food styling. So I will food style for advertisements for different companies, for magazines. I do the advertising pages in most of the Food Network magazines and things like
Do you do
that.
the
So
graphic layouts or you just provide photography?
Neither. I am the food stylist. So I make the
Literally
food
lay it out, make
that
it,
is in
make
the
the food.
picture.
Okay, got it.
Then those big shoots, you've got a graphic
Everybody.
designer, you've got a prop stylist, you've got a production manager, a photographer. So it's fun to just kind of go in and do that one little thing.
That's so nice, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
actually so nice to be good at one thing, like
Yeah,
and not
it's
have to actually have to do all those other.
and wear all the hats, right? I know.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
then other times I will have brands partner with me and I'll create a recipe to put on my website
Hmm.
and feature their brand or their product. And so it just is across the board that I get to work on so many fun different projects and put on different caps. You know, some companies want very nutritional, healthy recipes, and
Yes.
other ones want 20-minute recipes with 5 ingredients. And so every job is a challenge and a fun one.
Well, you probably like that because you get to tap into so much of your kind of problem solving and creativity, right?
I think that's what keeps me going. Otherwise, you'd get so bored with
Oh my
doing
God.
the same old thing.
Yeah, exactly. And then so one of the things you were talking about was basically kind of doing things on trend. Talk to me about like trends related to the cooking industry or food industry.
Well, depending on the niche of the industry you're in, right? Whether you own a restaurant or you're a food stylist like me or recipe developer, it's very different. So I will be very aware of new food products that are coming out, of what restaurants are serving, what chefs are creating,
Yes. Hmm.
what magazines are publishing. And so all of those things go together to create these trends that the nation then
Hmm.
gloms
Dive
onto, right?
into. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
And so I'm very aware of that. And you can sort of spot big trends quickly. Like a few years ago, let's talk about cauliflower, right?
Hmm. Yeah, totally.
We could see that
Or
coming
kale.
as, yes, or kale. You could see that coming as food professionals. And then it was just everything was made of cauliflower, and everyone was eating cauliflower rice and cauliflower gnocchi and cauliflower pizza crust. And then you see that sort of die and a new trend coming in. And so those are the trends that I sort of keep on top of so that I can tell my clients, hey, this is really important. Or the flavors of, you know, Korea or Japan or Malaysian flavors are really showing up in the industry. Like, let's play with that. And I think that's really fun because it's
Yeah,
always changing.
super cool. I love that because first of all, you must be amazing to go out to dinner with. Um,
Or annoying. I
eat
don't know.
any
One or
food,
the other.
eat any
Yeah.
food, period.
Yeah.
But so when we think about that you live in the food capital of the world, or one of the food capitals of the world, one of maybe five, and you can basically eat any food that you want to there. My question for you is, what's like who's your aspirational chef? Like when you're like, wow, it's not even the restaurant because we know that chefs change restaurants. Sometimes they stay forever, but
Mm-hmm.
like really in your looking at it from your lens, it's always the chef. It's not the restaurant necessarily. It's the experience of the restaurant, but different.
Mm-hmm. I think wow factor
Mm-hmm.
is Chef Michael at Gramercy Tavern. He's amazing. And Jean George.
Yeah,
Jean George never fails. Like
yes.
he can switch from this to that and has a lot of different restaurants, but just it's amazing food. So those chefs are really that wow factor that I love, and I love that I have accessibility to
Yeah.
their offerings. But in general, I love chefs like Jamie Oliver. He's
Mm-hmm.
from the UK. He is so fun and seems so real and just wants you to enjoy eating and cooking.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when a chef, whether at a restaurant or a personality chef that you're watching on TV, I think when they can exude that joy of food and new tastes and cooking and learning, oh my gosh, don't you just love them? It just
Yeah,
warms your heart.
exactly. And I think the interesting thing is we talked about this a little bit before getting on the call, but like there's you really are a jack of all trades. Like you have to be good at everything. And those types of chefs, it's like you're a personality uh,
Mm-hmm.
with an amazing talent attached to it, and have to like you're an actor on some level.
That is so interesting that you brought that up, because I think of all of my food industry friends who are so amazing and experts in their own right, but don't like to be on TV, don't like to, they don't maybe have the skills to share that with a crowd. And it's very different. And I find I have worked at it, but I've honed being able to be on camera and share. And so I get jobs that will allow me to do that. I get hired to be on TV and things like that. But a lot of experts and amazing talents don't. And it is, you
They're
have to
more
wear a
like
lot of
they're
hats.
introverted. You know, they,
Yes.
yeah, like please don't put me in front of the camera.
Yeah. And while I don't love it, I'm not a show pony. I don't like being on camera, but I have had to learn how to be on camera. Does that make sense?
No, no, for sure. And I do feel like we talked about learned skills versus inherent skills. And I
Mm,
feel like it is a learned skill. Like,
yeah.
you know, some people are born to present, you know,
Hmm.
and others fall into it, but then feel completely confident once they've honed this skill, you know?
Sure. Sure.
So, and you know, we all have our own ways of like getting prepped before
Yeah.
we getting hyped before we get up there. Um, but yeah, I remember that when I used to be in the corporate world and do these huge presentations, that I'd be in the bathroom like pumping myself up before I got out there, like Rocky. Just kidding.
Yeah. And then did you find, like, once those lights went on, once you were live,
I was like,
you were
I'm
that
good.
expert. You could do it. But there
Totally.
is that nerve-wracking, like, sort of anxiety and
Yes, it's an
stage
anxiety, but
trauma.
it's,
Yeah.
anxiety's bad. I mean, anxiety
Hmm.
drives us too. So, you
Hmm.
know, just like stress, it's like some, you know, some people, it was interesting. I was reading an article the other day. It's just in general, like some people are not meant to be in stressful situations or
Yeah.
stressful roles, and others thrive in it. Although you don't want like adrenal fatigue, like problems, you know. So it's like you got to know your balance,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So,
that's true.
yeah. So tell me what you would say, like, what do you want next? Like, if you
Oh,
could pick anything to do, like, I was thinking, like, would you move internationally? Would you, you know, I don't know.
hmm. Back in the day, maybe in my like late 20s, 30s, I don't think I'd make a big
You're not
move.
20.
Right. Thank you. Um, no, I like my life. I like certain parts of it, and I don't see a reason to shake certain things up with a big adjustment. I'm open to change and opportunity. I think that's a fine balance, right? Is, hey, I'm open to something that might come my way and really change my life, and I'm not seeking it out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what's next? What do I want? Ugh. I mean, if you, like, therapists ask me this question and you immediately start crying, I don't know what I want.
Yeah.
But you kind of have to face that question a lot, and I often put it on the back burner because I'm so busy with what is
What you
happening,
have.
right, rather than what I want. And
But at the
it's,
same time, maybe what you have is what you want.
I think so. I think it's right. It's that choice. You
Mm-hmm.
choose how you feel. You choose what, how you come, how you present yourself in any
Totally.
circumstance. And so I try to find happiness in what I'm
Yeah.
doing now and what I've got, and
Because by the
gratefulness.
way, isn't it about the now? I mean, because this is truly the only moment we have, right?
Right. Right. It's you tell people don't live in the past or don't live too far in the future, right? That's
Mhm.
so true.
Yeah, because the thing is, at the end of the day, like when we really think about it, there is no control. Like control's a
No.
facade. Yes,
Yeah.
we do have to hit certain deadlines in our lifetimes, but I think I don't know your age. I think we may be around the same age, even if we're a decade apart. We've still hit a certain part in our careers.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I think the thing is that sometimes when you already hit a certain level, it's like want is there's some maybe goals that you want to hit, but not like, wow, I'm really missing this, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, you're hitting me after I've just completed writing 2 books in the last 4 years. And so I kind of am at a new starting point of, like, I always wanted to write a cookbook and be a published author. And the opportunity came several years ago, and now I've done it. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of at that place where I'm like, oh, what is the next thing that I want to dive into, that I want to say, hey, this is challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know. I want to grow my business.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get to a place of comfort and security with my business. And then I want to explore me and
Mm-hmm.
travel and find things that, in this time of my life,
Continue to light you up.
yeah, you've got it.
Yeah, I have a question for you about like when you talk about like getting to this certain level and feeling basically secure in yourself, right? And when you say, because it's kind of a tipping point with women, when you say you want to feel secure in your business and grow your business, does that mean more clients? Does that mean more revenue generation? Does that mean I want to have more staff? I don't know.
Right now, I mean, my quick answer would be more revenue generation. And you know what's funny? I know how to do that. It takes time and it takes work, but I can see. I know how to do that. And so I'm excited to
How
take
did
those
you
steps
learn to do
forward.
that?
Learning, like educating myself.
Like
So
hands-on.
that is such an interesting question because I came from publishing
Mm-hmm.
and my business is mostly online. So almost 50% of my business is my blog and my
Mm-hmm.
website. And then the other half is consulting with brands. And I had to learn all of that. I was a publishing editor. I
Wow.
knew nothing about the web or keywording
Totally.
or monetizing a website. And it has been a lot of years of self-educating, taking courses. It was like going back to school to start my own business.
Oh, I believe it because I think it's like there's all of those like SEO things, a little bit
Right.
of this like black hole. And
Yeah.
it's trial and error, and you try a lot of different people because when you are an entrepreneur, you have limited resources. And
Yep.
we both come from having teams and having resources, and then you have nothing, and then you're like, well, how can I get more people? How can I get more traffic?
Totally. Totally. I always thought we had somebody that ran Pinterest and we had somebody that did the
Totally.
finances and now I have to wear all the hats. So um yes, I have hired staff over the years and have a wonderful freelance team, and that's so helpful. But I still have to know how to do everything. I still have to understand my business that I'm running. And I think it will always change. There's more stuff to learn, but I'm used to the process now.
Yeah, so true. And I think, like you said, you had to learn. You had to take courses. It just wasn't like overnight.
Yeah.
It goes back to our original conversation from earlier. So I could talk to you forever because
I
clearly
love it. I know.
you're an amazing wealth of information and you've shared so much beyond just the food industry. And my question for you is, do you have anything that you would like to share with female entrepreneurs who are just getting started, people who want to break into the food industry?
That's a great question. I think it depends on who I'm talking to. So I don't know about like overarching sort of something. I think is find what you love to do.
Mm.
Just like maybe my parents said to me many, many years ago, find what you love about what you're going into because you're going to be doing it a lot.
Mm.
Have a passion for it. And then I think things follow from there.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree with you. And I think there's a lot of people that I've met through the years, having coached them, that weren't told that at a young age.
Yes.
And
Right.
we're more actually told about a skill versus
Yeah.
passion for something, and have said, I'm not passionate about something. I'm like, everybody has a passion. You've just
Yeah.
not tapped into, you've not been allowed to dream.
Yeah.
So
I honestly, Michelle, I think that advice so many years ago was so special because I'm one of not very many people that I know who is still doing the same thing that I started out doing. I haven't changed careers. I think most adults change careers two or
oh,
three
yeah.
times,
No,
right?
actually, it's 8 to 12, but yeah.
Oh my gosh, wow. So I see that in my friends and family, and I am so glad that. So that's why I'm sharing the advice to somebody else. Is
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I'd love to know, because I ask everybody, what your top 5 core values are.
Top 5. Okay, let's see.
If you have 6, it's okay. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm just going to start listing them. I don't know that I have them in any specific order,
Okay.
but things that come to mind, just that I've, you know, learned as an adult and cherish as a value is uh, kindness,
Mm-hmm.
responsibility. I think, gosh, responsibility is huge, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
you're responsible for everything, even your attitude. Humility, and I struggle with that one, but I want to be better at humility. I think that plays into a lot of things. Let's see, that was 3. God, I'm very religious,
Very
and
spiritual.
my faith is a huge part of my life and values.
Spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Spirituality, and I think, I don't know, playfulness.
Oh,
I
I love
think,
that. I see that playfulness in you.
oh, thanks. Trying to, I mean, I think that's where joy and happiness comes in, because you choose
Absolutely.
that. You get to choose that in your life. So
Absolutely.
it's something I
And
like to
I'm
home.
going to
So,
give you one that you mentioned earlier when I
oh
said
yeah.
what you think it takes to be successful, because I really felt it hit a chord with you, is community.
Oh, yes. Yes. And I value community. I don't know that it's like a value of
It's a
mine,
value
but
of
yes.
yours. Yeah.
Yes, I do. That is so,
Your
thank you for
decisions
bringing
are
that
based,
up
and that's
again.
one of the reasons why you've been successful is because you're living from that value.
Well, yes, and that's where I met you. Is
Mm-hmm.
one of my communities that I cherish and value. I was there, you were there, and how special is that?
Yeah, I really feel grateful
Me too.
for having this interaction, but also for actually being welcomed in that community. So here I was on my way to NASDAQ, and I was like, I have an hour, so may as well go and go to this event.
Yeah, most people who love food are very nice. So you
Oh,
were very
totally. I
welcome.
was like, oh, I could go and get some food before I go to the event.
Yeah.
Awesome. And meet some amazing chefs. Cool. It's all good for me. Win win.
Love it.
Anyways, I really want to thank you for your time. And I really want to thank you for being open and honest and honestly kind. Like, really, I see that at the bottom of your core is that's where you operate from.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. What a joy. You're a pleasure to talk to.
Oh, anytime, anytime. And I look forward to being back in New York and having dinner together or when you
Yes.
actually come to LA.
Wouldn't that be fun? I love it.
Yeah.
I'll come for sunshine.
Yeah, you need to make it a point to come and I'll see
Perfect.
you around. Now,
Thanks.
leave anybody with where they can follow you. I know you're very active on Instagram. You have a robust website as well, and your books and everything.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing is social media. You can always find me on Facebook or Instagram. It's Tara Teaspoon. And then my blog is tarateaspoon.com. And that's where I am. That's where I like to build my community is my website and my newsletter. But my books are anywhere online, and have a little piece of me in your house. I would love it.
Always, always. And I think let's gather, right?
I would love it. Exactly.
And make some delicious meals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Good one.
Exactly. Well, I love you so much and thank you for
Oh,
everything. Have a wonderful day.
thanks, you too.